Hi, Bentley Adams here again, the founder and CEO of Whey. I'm just stepping in to give you a little bit of context around relationship with food, and it's a super important subject. Um, the relationship with food to us is really the core of intuitive eating. When we think of what intuitive eating is and the two major benefits within Whey, listening to your body and then also to aligning your way of living and eating with your values, really what the long tail of intuitive eating is. That behind all of that is really what the relationship with food is. And so when I think about it personally, my mission and my passion of helping people really impacting their health, impacting their happiness, and really finding more peace and more joy in life. When we think about one of the best and most important studies that was ever done is on there's the Harvard study in adult development, which in 2015 the director of the study, the fourth director of the study, did a TED talk, and it's an amazing TED talk, and we're linking to it down below in the blog here. But what you can, what the director concluded was is that the single best predictor of our health and happiness is actually the quality of our relationships with other people. The best predictor of our health and happiness is, let me repeat this again, is the quality of our relationships with other people. And he noted that that wisdom is as old as the hills. It's not actually new wisdom. It's something that we now have science to back the reason why behind it. And last year actually released a more of a scientific and physiological understanding of why, the reason why relationships are so important. And we know it's because if you have isolation and loneliness, it's physically damaging. But the reason why those are damaging physically is because the body is really going through a little minor. It seems minor, but it's actually quite significant stress reaction when when you're feeling isolated, when you're feeling lonely. And that stress reaction, actually, if it's chronic, if you're chronically lonely, chronically isolated, it creates chronic stress. And we get chronic stress from all these different angles. And that chronic stress, if it doesn't turn off, turns into inflammation. And chronic inflammation, there's a whole mound of data for decades that we've had that basically says inflammation is really the cause of almost all of the, over 50% of the known diseases, the biggest ones. So cardiovascular disease, which is by a factor of 5x, is the biggest killer of, cause of premature death within the United States. Diabetes, insulin resistance, dysfunction of the pancreas, definitely linked to inflammation. And so people go on the anti-inflammatory diets and all these things, but we don't come back to just learning how to calm down, learning how to step out of the stress. And our relationships with food and our relationships with our body can be a significant source of stress because they can create shame. And this is something that I personally believe there needs to be more scientific study on. But the feeling of shame versus guilt in the Brene Brown sense is really important. And the way that clinically, if you go to any behavior scientist, they'll generally define it how Brene did. But I think it's really important to distinguish. Shame is the feeling of unworthiness, of love, belonging, or connection, almost always, or by definition, from an external source. It's a social standard. So, what does this sound like? This sounds like diet culture. This sounds like a restrictive diet that tells you what to eat. It doesn't really care who you are or where you came from or what needs you have or what socioeconomic status you are. It doesn't care about how much money you have. It cares about you do this and then you get this result. And actually, most people don't get that result really ever. And the ones that do, it doesn't last. All the studies show 83% of diets fail. The other emotion is guilt. And the feeling of guilt is different. It's a feeling of, as Brene Brown, as she, I think says very well, it's actually adaptive and useful. Still doesn't feel good, but when you feel guilty, what's really happening is you're feeling like I'm not living up to my values. When you feel like you're not living up to your values, it can not feel good, but at least you know that it's connected to your values, so you can start to shift and it can inform your next decision. And so the relationship with food and the relationship with the body, especially when we talk about body image and that feeling of shame, which is very slight, but it's basically that you don't belong if your body doesn't look like this thing and this shape. And that is just absurd on so many levels, but it can create stress. And so figuring out how to just keep those out, keep that out of the um, out of your mind as much as possible. But we do in way, especially in the mindful shifts pathway, find little ways to shift and change the small talk that you have. And so, but that's something you can do in any way, in any form. Just make the decision to do it because it will affect not just how you feel and feeling better, feeling more joy, that sort of thing, just by separating yourself from any sense of a social standard around body image. Your body is your body. It's beautiful. It's the most intelligent, efficient system that humans have ever studied. No scientist worth their salt's going to debate you on that. And so if it's there, appreciate it. Learn how to be grateful for it. And just that practice of gratitude will lower your stress. It'll create more calmness. You'll get into parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what we really, really hope that you can do. But behind everything that happens in intuitive eating, the core of it really is the relationship with food. The relationship with food and the body, but the food is what makes us human. It's the essence of who our species are. The reason why we're different from every other great ape is because we learned how to eat cooked food. And that's really the bioavailability of the food, how the way it broke down, the absorbability of the food in the small intestine. That's what allowed our forebrain to grow. And the forebrain is what defines our species. And it's still to this day, 60% of the sugar that's used in that's 60% of the sugar that makes its way into the bloodstream is used by the brain. It's a massive number. It's 2 pounds. It's only 2 pounds. I don't like using weight as a measure of much, but it's a very important reference. This small thing up here uses 60% of the sugar that we get in our body and all the nutrients, a disproportionately high amount. Why? It's because food is so important, and it's a sign, and it's a symbol of how important food is to who we are. So it's something, the relationship with food is something that will take a lifetime to explore, and as it should. It's also the reason why we've named our app that we really put a lot of love and hard work into. We've named it Way. And Way comes from the original Greek word for diet, which was diaita, which means way of living. There's only one way of living, and that's whatever way of living and eating that you find works for you, that works for your body, that works in the sense to give you the most joy out of this precious, beautiful life that we get to live in. And so hopefully this helps, but definitely want you to explore your relationship with food in or outside of Way, however, whatever works for you. But obviously we're here to help, and would love to hear any thoughts as you come up and go through the sessions, or just generally speaking, what would help you in exploring your relationships with food and your body. So lots of love to you. Have a beautiful day.